Hi everyone, this is Grandmaster Ben Finegold. Well, if you knew how many times I tried to make this video, you might feel a little sorry for me. I'm using some new software, and I think it's a lot better than the old software, so we'll see if it works. This is my game played in 2013 with Fidel Corrales Jimenez, who's a Webster University student by way of Cuba, now playing for the U.S. And this is possibly my best tournament win as far as the way I played and calculation and stuff like that. And the fact that my opponent was a strong grandmaster. At the time of the game, he was about 75 points higher rated than me. And this was played in the St. Louis Open last year. Okay, so I'm white, once again in a Queen C2 Nimzo Indian, just like in my game with Gelfand. And like Gelfand, Fidel played C5, I took. And Boris played Queen C7, which I've only faced the one time. Fidel took. Now there's a nice sort of trap here. I played Knight F3, but if you play the move Bishop G5, then you fall into a trick. Black has Bishop takes F2 check, followed by Knight G4 check, and then his queen will take my bishop on G5, and I'll be down a pawn, and I've lost the right to castle. Well, that's just losing. So Bishop G5 is not playable now. I played Knight F3, which is the correct move. Knight C6, Bishop G5. I've had this position a few times. The main move is Knight to D4, which Fidel did not play. And then you trade. And after E3, Black plays another trading move. Well, I should say simplifying move. Queen to A5, which puts tremendous pressure on the C3 knight, threatening to destroy my pawn structure. So this trade is more or less forced. And usually White plays Queen D2 here, since it's difficult for White to castle either way. If the bishop on F1 moves, the G pawn is hanging and castling queenside is illegal. So this ending has happened many times at the Grandmaster level. I've only had this position once, I think. I might have had it twice. I remember drawing Svetozar Gligoric in 1988, the only time I played the famous Yugoslav Grandmaster. Okay, so instead of Knight D4, Fidel castled, which is also okay. And now, after H6, Bishop H4, he decided to play the hedgehog formation, which Gelfand played against me, with two differences. Well, Gelfand castled queenside and didn't do well. And Fidel's knight is on C6 instead of D7. I think the knight is better placed on D7, as we'll see later in the game. Okay, so he fianchettoed his bishop on B7. And we got this position pretty quickly. Actually, my pieces are almost in the exact same places they were against Gelfand. And now I'd like to play Knight B5 and put tremendous pressure on D6. So Fidel played A6. This is the first key point in the game, and I think the theme of this game is overworked. If you knew how many times I tried to make this video, you would say I was overworked. I'm sure this is at least try number 9 with about 5 different kinds of software. Hopefully I'll be using this software in the future. It was recommended to me by someone. Okay, so the bishop on E7 is overworked. It's defending the knight on F6, and it's also defending the pawn on D6. So these two things have to be protected. They're both protected by the bishop on E7. So I just played the move bishop takes F6. Now if he plays bishop takes F6, I just win the pawn on D6. That's why I doubled rooks on the D file. Okay, so Fidel, the slight king weakening with G takes F6. And I put some more pressure on his D pawn with Knight E4. Okay, now speaking of overworked, Fidel overworked my queen by playing Knight B4. My queen is attacked, and also he's unleashed his bishop on B7 to my knight on E4. So I played Queen B1. Now, you'll notice my queen is not only protecting my knight on E4, it's also protecting my pawn on A2. So Fidel played bishop takes E4, and then knight takes A2, and he's a pawn ahead. Unfortunately, his king is rather weak, and he has a lot of weak pawns and a lot of weak squares. And maybe most important of all, his knight on A2 is a little out of play. Okay, so I played Knight D4, and I wanted to play Knight C6. And what that does is it attacks the queen. When the queen moves away, I'll take his bishop, and then there's insufficient defense to his pawn. So he saw Knight C6, and he has a couple of moves to stop it. He could play Queen to D7, I think that's like an obvious move. It defends c6. And he could also play f5 and attack my queen. Those are both okay. White has an advantage in either case. Instead, he made the losing move. He played knight to b4. And this not only protects c6, but it also gets his knight out of a2. So it seems like an obvious move. Unfortunately for Fidel, I have another threat which he overlooked. So here White's actually winning. And again, the theme of the game is overworked. So White has a winning tactic based on something that's overworked. It's pretty unusual. It's the f7 pawn. The f7 pawn is protecting g6 and e6. And I just take on e6, forking his queen and rook. He has to capture. And now I have queen g6 check. Of course, I have a draw if I want it, but I'd rather checkmate his king. If I play the more or less obvious rook d4 with the idea of playing rook h4 mate, then he'll play f5 and his bishop and also his queen will defend the h4 square. So I played bishop g4, which was my intention. Now I'm threatening either to take on e6 right away, threatening queen h6 mate, or queen h6 check, and then bishop takes e6. And black has two logical moves. In the game, he played queen d7, defending his pawn. He can also play f5, in which case I would check again, and then take on f5. I'm threatening queen g6 check, and I'm also threatening rook d4, rook g4, with really an unstoppable attack. The most logical move, rook f6, runs into queen takes c8. So that's not playable. In this position, chess engines say that white is up approximately +5. So this really isn't playable for black. His king is just too exposed. Okay, so Fidel didn't like f5. He played queen d7. And I played the spectacular move that I had prepared when I sacrificed my knight on e6. Another sacrifice, bishop f5. Obviously, I want to play queen h7 mate. And, well, he has to take my bishop. Now I play rook d4, threatening rook h4 mate. The only real defense is to play f4 and then f5. Now his bishop is defending h4. And I double rooks, threatening rook h4 with mate. And after the game, I suggested to Fidel he could play rook c7, which I don't think he looked at. And this is actually what I was planning to do when I sacrificed my knight a few moves ago. I saw this position and concluded that white was winning. After queen takes d6, I'm forking the rook and the knight. He'll probably save the rook, and then white should be winning here with 3 extra pawns. That's the best he could do, but as he said after the game, that's also losing. Okay, instead of rook c7, he played queen to d8, stopping rook h4 mate. Unfortunately, white has an attack on all the squares on the h-file. If I could put a white rook anywhere, h7, h6, h5, h3, I would still be winning. So I played rook f3, threatening rook h3 check. And he played f4, blocking my rook. So now if I play rook h3, he can play bishop h4. And this was probably the most spectacular move of the game. Again, the overworked theme, bishop on e7 and the queen on d8 are defending the h4 square so that he can block my rook if I play rook h3 check. But they're also defending the d6 pawn, so they're overworked. I played the spectacular move, rook takes d6. He can't take my rook because I would play rook h3 with checkmate. He has to block with the queen and mate. While I'm threatening rook takes queen, and also my queen and 2 rooks form a mating net against his king. He played bishop h4. Now, I had a very quick checkmate, which I missed. I saw queen h6, rook g6, rook g7. And here, I only looked at queen e6 check, and I didn't see what to do against bishop e7. Of course, queen g6 check or queen h5 check, just end the game immediately. That would have been the best way to win. I found another way with queen h5. And this takes a couple more moves, but it's still pretty good. Well, computer says queen f6 is best here, but that's about -30. And here here black resigned. Black has one legal move. I have 2 different checkmates, either rook d4 and rook takes d5 mate, or I could play queen d6 check and rook takes f8 mate, which is what I was going to do. So this is the final position, and Fidel resigned. Well, I thought I calculated really well. I was pretty happy